Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Saunders here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. There's been some news that I actually find kind of intriguing, although not everybody seems to share my enthusiasm. Billy Joe Saunders standing on a treadmill with these pink headphones as though he's just robbed a 13-year-old girl at a Taylor Swift concert, was telling us that he wants to become a 3-time world champion and potentially move up to light heavyweight. Now, I personally found that quite intriguing. Why? Because when I started to look at the horizon at light heavyweight, I thought, listen, the one route you don't want to go down is Artur Beterbiev. Stylistically, the man's all wrong for you. He'll cut off the ring on you and he'll bludgeon you and take you out. Stay away from that boy. But Dmitry Bivol, I actually consider to be an intriguing stylistic matchup. Now, bear in mind, I'm saying intriguing. It doesn't necessarily mean he wins, but there's areas whereby the marriage of their strengths and weaknesses could make this interesting. Now, as you can imagine, I got a big backlash and I expected it. In fact, I think only one person was saying, I kind of see what you're saying. I think it would be intriguing. The majority of people were either laughing it off or respectfully disagreeing. And I don't mind that. Remember, I like it when people are willing to engage with me. I like bouncing ideas off of each other. That's the whole point of having a boxing channel, right? If we can't all critically think and explore ideas, what's the point of enjoying the sport? But there are also a few trolls in there, and I just want to explain something. Remember, just to add a bit of context here, you're talking to a guy that way before it became popular to do so, I was saying that Dmitry Bivol could go to the very top of the sport. When people used to say he's boring, he doesn't have the punching power or the killer instinct, he's not going to be able to handle it at the top of this division, I was saying, do not sleep on this guy. He has the blissful balance of a ballerina with the blistering combinations that can really throw a guy off, and he's a master of distance control. This is a man that can get to the top. In fact, when it came down to the Canelo Alvarez fight, which was a long time after I first started to really rave about him, he still hadn't received the praise that he deserved. Whilst there were some people that were saying, you never know, he might be able to beat Canelo, there is some sort of a risk there, but the majority were saying he's got no chance. Canelo Alvarez is going to win this fight. Here's what I had to say in my preview video to that fight. I cannot see how he's going to beat Dmitry Bivol at range. I just can't see it. I think he's going to get outboxed, outworked. Even with the brilliant method he has to be able to close the range against bigger guys, this is not an old Sergei Kovalev. This is not a flat-footed Callum Smith. He's able to dictate range, change direction quickly. He's very fluid. He's able to affect your construct. So what you could end up seeing is Dmitry Bivol winning the fight at range, and then when Canelo is close enough to throw a shot, he'll be able to throw a shot, land something big of his own, as Bivol then lands to get out, that active exit we're speaking about. So you can end up seeing Bivol being first in those exchanges where they're going to be landing on each other. Canelo will then land, and Bivol will be landing last on his way out. So I cannot see how Canelo Alvarez at range beats Dmitry Bivol. I think he's going to get outboxed and outclassed. Of course, he's always going to have a puncher's chance. But ultimately, I think that Bivol's the sort of guy with the sort of skill set that could get off first against Canelo. And even though Canelo's this brilliant counter-punching pressure fighter, Bivol has these type of skill set that would enable him to go again, finish last, and win those sorts of exchanges. So it's clear that I rate Dmitry Bivol highly. I have always done so. But styles make fights. So let's get into why I'm saying this could potentially be intriguing. When you consider what Dmitry Bivol is good at, he has those beautiful combinations. Like I said, he's a master of distance control. He has wonderful balance. His defense is statistically the best in boxing. And that elite level defense comes predominantly from his legs. Remember when Canelo Alvarez was walking him back onto the ropes early in the fight, he went to quite a high, tight guard. And you saw that Canelo was trying to target the bicep like he was doing to Callum Smith, trying to essentially hurt him to the arms to get him to drop that guard. An old Roberto Duran type of tactic. The point is, he was at his best when he would then pivot out and maintain range and be on the edge of range and bounce in and out on the balls of his feet. So his defense is all to do with the distance control that his legs provide for him. And we'll talk about that moving forward. But there's no doubt that he does have an elite level defense because he's so hard to find. When he steps out of an attack after whatever it is that he's put together, he'll often throw a very short left hook. So if you follow him out, you can end up getting caught with something. So you don't know whether to lead on him. If you do, he's going to get on the back foot and get away. If you wait on him to work, he's then going to overwhelm you with hand speed. And if you follow him out, he's very quick with brilliant balance and he can punish you as you're following him out. A nightmare to deal with. However, when you start to look at the sort of fighters he's faced, where does his skill set really stand out? Where are his advantages magnified? We'll take his last 9 fights as an example because they're notable names. Gilberto Ramirez was his last fight, a guy who really should be at cruiserweight. He's boiled down to light heavyweight. He's a big, strong, cumbersome kind of guy. So the speed and mobility advantage of Dmitry Bivol is going to be further magnified. Saul Alvarez, the sort of guy who is very fast with his upper body movement. He's very fast in his thought process, but his feet aren't particularly fast. Prior to that, you had Umar Salamov, another guy who's quite stiff, very strong, but stiff. Spider Richards is a very good technical boxer. And it became a straight technical boxing fight between two technical boxers. And that was such a competitive fight that the stock of Bivol fell. I remember this because people used to mug me off for rating Bivol so highly prior to the fight. One judge had that fight 115-114, another had it 115-113 to Dmitry Bivol. The third judge had it wide to Bivol, 118-110. If I remember rightly, I had it 7-5 or 8-4 to Dmitry Bivol. So I felt that he did a lot better than most people felt, but that it was a very competitive technical boxing match. The point is, when it wasn't a cumbersome guy trying to really get at him and hurt him, and he was willing to stand up against him and have a boxing match, it was a very technical and very challenging test for Dmitry Bivol. And we'll get to that later. He's also fought Gilbert Castillo Rivera. He fought Joe Smith Jr., who's of course another big, very heavy-handed, physically strong, but fairly cumbersome kind of guy. Jean Pascal, very small, quite sudden, but very aggressive. He's almost like the Sean Porter of the division. Again, not a technical boxer. Isaac Chilemba is a bit of a technical boxer. He's slippery, but he's not really a mover like Billy Joe Saunders. And so you're still going to see a massive foot speed advantage for Dmitry Bivol. A massive mobility advantage also existed against Sullivan Barrera. So these things are all magnified. Remember, he is not a big light heavyweight. He's been willing to fight Canelo and wanting to fight Canelo at 168. So this is the equivalent of a big super middleweight up against bigger guys, and he's making his mobility advantages count. Whereas with Billy Joe Saunders, things are a little bit different because Billy Joe is a wonderful mover when he's at his best. And remember, we're talking about Billy Joe at his best. If after this long layoff he comes back and he's washed, well, obviously that's something I can't account for. He's going to have to come back and fight one or two guys who are tune-up fights before he gets anywhere near the likes of Dmitry Bivol. But what we're talking about is if it's the Billy Joe that fought Canelo, or even better, the Billy Joe that fought David Lemieux, that's what we're judging him with, that sort of skill set. And he's very, very good at changing the levels. Unlike Spider Richards, who's a very good technical boxer as well, Richards fights quite tall and he's quite linear in his exit and entry points. Look at the way Billy Joe will lower his body. And by lowering himself, he makes himself a harder target, particularly against taller fighters, in fact. And he can target the body or the head. And he's willing to stab, jab, get on the back foot, make a fight boring. Even from a position of a wide stance, he doesn't lose that mobility. And he toys with that height. And so let's just say, for argument's sake, he's the one that's landing the jab ahead of Dmitry Bivol. Let's say the smaller, more mobile guy who's used to fighting smaller, faster fighters. Let's say he's the one that has the speed and mobility advantage. Well, let me ask you this. When was the last time you saw Dmitry Bivol get on the front foot, cut the ring off on a guy and hunt him? Especially a guy that moves like Billy Joe Saunders when he's at his best. Now listen, don't get me wrong. I can make a great case for Dmitry Bivol beating him too. Remember, I haven't said I think Billy Joe wins the fight. I've just said I think it's intriguing. Billy Joe, for instance, makes a technical error when he throws his backhand. He'll often lift that foot off the floor and he'll fall into his attack. He's so sudden and he disguises the jab so well, which then brings about the backhand, that when he brings that back foot off the floor and he falls into the target, he'll often tie him up and wrap him up or get close and bump him. And so he gets away with it. Dmitry Bivol, though, has the most graceful balance and he's more than capable of taking half a step back and then letting go of a blistering combination. That's how Canelo Alvarez eventually got to Billy Joe Saunders. He made Billy Joe lunge, something that he'd done on a few occasions in the fight, and then lined him up with a backhand uppercut. And when it landed, he literally broke his face. The thing is, though, Dmitry Bivol doesn't throw those sorts of shots. He's not a guy that loads up on big individual shots and uppercuts. He will take half a step back and then throw combinations. And Billy Joe's very good at quickly coming off the line, changing the angle and getting out and making you reset. Now, there are very few fighters that reset as quickly as Bivol. So even with that, Bivol might quickly reset alongside Billy Joe and then still be on top. So I'm not sitting here telling you Billy Joe's going to win this fight. If he's getting beaten to the jab, what's his plan B going to be? He'll have to get inside, where he is a good fighter inside, but he's also the smaller man. So how much success is he going to have getting on the inside against somebody who is as technically proficient as Bivol? So as you can see, I can make a case for both guys. I'm not saying Billy Joe would be the favourite. My pick would be Dmitry Bivol. But there is enough there, in stylistically speaking, whereby when I look at the possible available opponents for Dmitry Bivol, a fully fit, sharp Billy Joe Saunders would be one that provides me with intrigue ahead of many of the other potentials. There's enough there to make this an intriguing contest for me. It's a fight I would want to see if Billy Joe's at his best. Triangle theories don't work in boxing, ladies and gents. Just because Canelo destroyed Billy Joe Saunders with that big shot in what was a very good and competitive fight, by the way, and Dmitry Bivol really won against Canelo a lot wider than the card suggested, it doesn't mean that it's an easy night's work for Dmitry Bivol. And just because I felt that Billy Joe Saunders would get destroyed by Beterbiev, and I'm saying from a stylistic perspective, he could potentially cause some issues to Dmitry Bivol, it doesn't mean that I think Beterbiev destroys Bivol. Styles make fights, and most people use that term but don't believe it. Most people believe in levels. They will say a 9 out of 10 fighter will always beat a 7 out of 10 fighter. I do not believe in that philosophy. For me, a 7 out of 10 fighter can beat a 9 out of 10 fighter if he's all wrong for him. Is it a fight that would have some intrigue for you? Bear in mind as well, Dmitry Bivol, and we are going back a long time now, so I don't want to overanalyze and look into this too much, but he does have an amateur loss at the hands of Vosdik, who is a technical boxer. Now, he's bigger than Billy Joe, but he is a technical boxer. And he too has been calling out Dmitry Bivol. Do I think he beats Bivol? Well, that's another whole other topic for another video. But the point is, it will be interesting to see how Bivol matches up against other supreme technical boxers. Let me know what you think. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.